more. And so it became really, really clear that we were going to have to do something really out of the box. And so again, going back to my other realm where I go to Burning Man and I see amazing things happen with this idea of crowdfunding, which for those of you that don't know, uses a platform that gets small bits of money from a ton of people, kind of like on a reward base for some of the platforms. Kickstarter and Indiegogo are probably the two biggest ones. I decided that because our community is our little co-op community that cycles through every 3 to 5 years, and we have students that are very invested for the time that they're there, and then they go out into the world, that we can really appeal to them, and we can make something really unique insofar that we could recapture their attention and probably bring money into the co-op from pretty far away in increments of $1 or $10. And I had this marketing piece that was basically ripples making waves, and that the future of the co-op is in the hands of just this generation. And so a lot of people didn't think that it was possible. Most people didn't think that it was possible. I went through a lot of process right in the beginning where people said that it was actually impossible and that it was crazy to even think that we could accomplish this. How can you get mountains out of these little molehills? Like how can you do this? And so in the more traditional capitalizing piece, we reached out to National Cooperative Bank, and they came in as the primary lender, and then NCDF stepped in to help offset the other half of the down. And so we had what I thought to be a very achievable goal of raising $225,000 through a crowdfunding platform that was yet to be discovered because, by the way, Kickstarter and Indiegogo totally out of policy to raise money for real estate. So that was a little bit crazy when I found that out. And so we kind of were just all systems go. And so we had, in the end, about 60 days through all the contingency lifting and such to come up with this money. And we did. What ended up actually happening is, so our co-op put in the end about $75,000. We are about to ink a contract with UC Santa Barbara tomorrow or on Friday for $40,000, which is institutionalize the co-op as a required resource in their student government. $40,000 are coming to us from 5 different student organizations who are all similarly aligned in mission with the co-op. In a very full circle piece, they actually gave the co-op $6,000 to open the store in 1972 also. So for our 40th anniversary present, they stepped in with $40,000 more. That's awesome. And we're a required resource now, so we're paying that back over 5 years in the form of like a student discount program and snacks for their meetings. And so basically creating co-op shoppers and a culture of co-op where students are now going to look at us even more as a resource for them, because when the co-op first started, it was started by this former generation of students that really cared, and the student newspaper would report about everything at the co-op, like a manager got fired for stealing inventory. I mean, I found in the archives every skeleton in the co-op closet is alive and well in the archives of the university. I mean, these kids really cared about the store, and so we've got an opportunity through what was ultimately a mechanism of crowdfunding to really recreate the culture of that love of our store. And so that piece happened. $40,000 came to us, again, Ripples Making Waves, from what was a totally deactivated nonprofit that I had never heard of called the Isla Vista Community Development Corporation, which was started in part by somebody who also started the Santa Barbara Student Housing Co-op. A former executive director happens to be sitting here. Very good friend. And so they stepped forward and they heard the story and they got really inspired, and they were like, well, we have some money. Why don't you come and have a meeting with us, let us know a little more about you and what your ideas are. And I was thinking $5,000, all of our business casual, which is this. And I'll go to this meeting, and they gave us $40,000 because they aligned with our mission, which is to better business in Isla Vista and to keep our community healthy and robust for low to moderate income residents, which is pretty much everybody in Isla Vista. And so the other $60,000 basically came, $60,000. I mean, I'm a little bit unprepared. I'm sorry. I came off of another big project to the meeting and then to this. Came in from over 1,000 people that basically gave us anywhere from $1 to $10,000 because they felt like our project was something that they wanted to invest in. And so truly ripples can make waves, and this project is a testament to that. And we had money coming in from as far as Australia and China, Singapore, England, all over the place. The National Cooperative Bank they had a woman named Aja wrote an amazing article that got published in the Rural Cooperatives magazine, which I had never heard of and has a circulation of 15,000. Who knew? That's amazing. And what's been happening here, and I gave a presentation about this last week at the California Co-op Development Conference also, is hopefully what it can do is inspire communities, and not necessarily just co-ops, to look at these alternative mechanisms for raising capital that are a little bit outside the box, but can appeal to a demographic that can't put in $5,000 for member loan, that maybe can only give you $5, but their $5 becomes just as relevant as the kind of capitalization that can happen with preferred stock and with Class C shares and with these different structures that are really also hard for young people to understand when they're just becoming co-op shoppers. We're just becoming an entry point opportunity for them to not just become better consumers and more conscious consumers, but to potentially take our models and take it into their lives in totally different ways. And so what ended up happening is that this generation of students at UC Santa Barbara actually bought our building. And so now when they come back to the community in 20 years, things are going to be totally different, but we know for a fact that the co-op will still be there in the same building, and they'll have put $5 on it. And that's a really big deal when you're a college student that has no money, and that $5 is a meal. So they gave us their lunch money, and we did that, I should say, also in a few different ways. The online platform that I ended up using was through a company called Blue Sky Collaborative, and it's used for AIDS walks and jogathons. And so they recreated the platform in a way that could work for us, so I didn't have to go through Kickstarter and Indiegogo illegally, because some of the more renegade people in my community were like, no, just do it, they'll never know, no one will know. And I'm like, no, I think we're getting a lot of attention for this, I think we should find a new platform. We also hosted events, so we had a farm-to-table dinner that brought in a few $1,000s, and then our biggest event was Co-oparoo, which was a music festival that happened at one of the housing co-ops that literally brought in $4,000 in $1 bills. That I had no idea that was kind of crazy. College students giving us their lunch money, literally, with which to capitalize this project, with which to allow us to buy our building. And so I have a lot of gratitude. Brenda's back there also, who I worked with arm in arm through this process. And again, having never done anything like this before, I will say that the crowdfunding piece is obviously critical to how this happened, and the visibility that it gained is amazing. But what it comes down to is that the National Cooperative Bank and NCDF both believed enough in the project that they could help, because no local banks wanted to work with us. We had no guarantor. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. I learned so much along the process, and I'm blessed that I got to work with people that understand our model, and it wasn't really a question. That wasn't what the problem was, and we were able to get past that co-op thing really, really quickly, which allowed me to have the energy necessary to oversee this campaign that brought 75 volunteers together to buy our building and to make it happen. And so we closed escrow on January 11th, which was very fortuitous. Funds are very lucky in numerology, and I felt really blessed for that. Not with some other crazy things that happened as well. And now we own it, so that happened. Thanks.
So I guess I'm up. That was a lot of great stuff. Okay, so I'm pretty far removed from college, but I'm still one of the $5 demographic. And so what I've been interested in for a while now is, I guess, for lack of a better term, the creation of a co-op investment group, right? Getting a whole bunch of people together, pool money, and invest primarily in non-voting preferred shares in the co-op economy. It kind of started when I was at Equal Exchange. As a worker-owner, you know, we had a great benefit, a retirement benefit, where the co-op would put 4% of salary into a 401k. I'm not that much of a fan of Wall Street, and I thought that was a lot of money that I would rather be going into the co-op economy. And so at that time, Scott and I were really brainstorming, like, is there a different way to do this? What if as part of that retirement benefit, we could just check off and actually invest in preferred shares in Equal Exchange? That's what my goal was at that time. And ever since then, for years now, I've just kind of ebbed and flowed with that idea in the back of my mind, and recently just decided, with a new baby on the Sword board, a new job in finance, I have nothing else going down. Why not really dig into this and see if this could work? So I I've started talking to people in the co-op sector, finance sector, legal realm, public officials, and aside from overwhelming support, the first response is always, this isn't the first time that someone came up with this idea, this has been thought about for decades now. The second quick follow-up response to that is, and there's a lot of securities and investment regulations that prevent you from doing this. So, doesn't mean you can't do it, it just means there's pretty big hurdles. So, that's fine, I'd like to keep on pushing forward, because I think, really what this comes down to is that, the securities and investment regulations not only affect who can invest, what kind of money, who are the qualified investors. If you have a net worth of $1 million or make over $200,000 a year, you can kind of do whatever you want as far as investment. Your flexibility is wide open. If you're under that, well then you're kind of shuffled in a little bit more towards, you might not be benefiting much from Wall Street, but that's what you're going to be investing in. I don't like that answer at all, and so I still like to push forward and try to find something different. The other thing that happens with these, regulations is that's kind of why Equal Exchange, Namaste Worker Co-op, it's a solar co-op in Colorado, that's why their preferred shares are $10,000, because of some of the regulations on what your pool of investors can be, what the ceilings are before you become a public company. All of these different things all come back to securities and investment regulations that on their own are good. This happened all in the 30s and 40s as a response to the stock market collapse. But that's the impediment. And so now I'm kind of coming to, well, what's changed? What's changed with all the people that have thought of this before? Those, Securities Acts and Investment Acts are still alive and well. And I think the landscape for me has changed enough to continue to start pursuing this and push forward. The landscape for individuals, the investors, so to speak, we've all become pretty disillusioned with Wall Street and large financial institutions. So the same way that I've felt about our economic system for a long time now, it's starting to become pretty much public sentiment. And so that's definitely changed. The other thing that's changed also is with co-ops, looking to get out of traditional bank loans and look for alternative financing, both with preferred shares and all the things that have been discussed here are all awesome, and it's happening nationwide. I talked to someone at NCGA and they even said, there's no listing of what co-ops are offering preferred shares, but I do know that there's a lot of co-ops changing their bylaws to actually become, get set up to offer preferred shares, to access different alternative forms of financing and capitalization of their growth. So that's another thing that's changing. The pool, the diversity of what you can even invest in when we're talking about investing in the co-op economy is changing. And the third thing I think that's kind of exciting, that it fits in with those other two pieces, is that legislation is actually somewhat changing. The landscape as far as what's going on in legislation is changing. Both the Jobs Act that was passed kind of opened up crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, so opening up that pool of who can invest what money and how that works, but also opening up some of the regulations on how many and this and that. And so that's starting to change. There's other legislation that kind of dead on arrival, but it's coming up. There's a lot of talk in the public sector and certainly amongst individuals that something needs to change. We want to get money out of Wall Street and back into Main Street. I want to donate, contribute my money to something, even if all I'm getting back is a social return instead of a financial return, or some balance of the two. How do I get a minimum financial return and also get a social return? So those three things are definitely happening right now, and so that's what I'm working on, and I was really happy that Christina asked me to talk here, just because I'm very much in development phase, and I've talked to folks in the crowd here, and we'll continue to talk to people, but again, every conversation I've had has been very supportive, and no one's outright said, no, you can't do this, so I'm going to keep on pushing ahead, because I think in the, you know, we all know coming from, you know, in the co-op world that where there's a need, that's kind of where co-ops have come out of. And there's risk and there's a lot of reasons why not, but that's not a reason not to. So, thanks for having me.
Great. It's fabulous to hear the stories, even some of which I've heard before in parts, but it's really great to hear them all together. And I mean, just to add a few comments, I would say NCDF, as one example of a group that benefited from Equal Exchange being willing to just open up all of its paperwork on its preferred stock and have multiple conversations with us when we were looking at first issuing preferred stock in 2008, 2009, and you know, they sent us all their documents, said here, do what you can with them, and spent time talking with us, and that was really valuable. And I think that's indicative of the kind of sharing that you see among the cooperatives. I mean, this willingness to kind of test out new ideas, to be innovative, as a number of people talked about, but also share those ideas, and not just to kind of do them and sort of hold them for ourselves, but to kind of to want them to be available to the other co-ops. But I think this is just a fabulous example of all of these sort of crazy ideas that if you talk to anyone outside of this sector, they would probably say, yeah, not going to happen. And yet instead you get these responses of, well, on the other hand, maybe we can. And I think it's a great, it's very inspiring and great examples of how you can take something that just sounds crazy and make it work. So.